Okay, so here we are again in Pixlr, and I'm going to show you some additional correction tools that you can use more in your portrait technique. Now, in the last tutorial, we talked about the importance of seeing the layers palette and the history palette. So if you aren't seeing those, remember that if you go up to your Pixlr tab and you click on View and you select your layers palette, it should appear on the right-hand side of your screen, and your history palette also should appear below your layers palette. So the first thing we're going to do before we make any changes is, again, as in the as in the first video, we're going to go up to our layer tab and we're going to select layer, duplicate layer, because we always want to be working on a copy of our image, not the actual original image. Okay, so in the last tutorial, we did some basic color correction using the curves. As you can see, this image needs it as well. This image looks very green on the screen, okay? And this is a good habit to get into, because sometimes after you're looking at an image for quite some time, you may not realize that it needs a color correction. All right, your eyes sort of adjust to it, and that green goes away after a little bit, or perhaps it's an orange or a red tone. So it's a good habit to get into. So we're going to go back into our adjustment tab. We're going to click on curves. In the previous image, we really only needed the shadow eyedropper, but here we're going to use both. Okay, we're going to use both the shadow eyedropper and the highlight. I'm going to start with the highlight, and I feel like the highlight is going to be right down here on the book. I think it's going to be one of these areas is going to be one of our brighter points in the image. So I'm going to select right here, and you can see the color adjustment already. Okay, you can see that image adjustment already. We're taking some of that green away. I'm going to go back now, and I'm going to grab the eyedropper for the shadow, and I'm going to go somewhere into her hair. Okay. All right, so here we are with some basic color correction techniques that you can use in your portrait assignment this week. You can also use it in your motion assignment if you would need to, but the pieces that I'm going to show you in this tutorial can really change your portraits a little bit more than your motion shot this week. But feel free to use these techniques as you move forward through the rest of the images in this class. And really, the habit that I'm going to show you today is something you should really get into doing on a regular basis with your images. As you look at this image, you can see that it's pretty green. Their skin is not the correct tone, so I need to color correct for that. And it's a good practice to get into doing this for every image, because sometimes your eyes adjust to an image and you don't recognize the color correction that is needed in every case. So this is a good practice to get into for the rest of your images. So in the last tutorial, I showed you where right now we're seeing your image, but we're also seeing the layers palette and the history palette. So if you don't see those right now, go up to your View tab, and you're going to select Layers, and your Layers palette will become visible, and your History palette, if you select History, that palette will become visible as well. So make sure those are up. The next thing we're going to do is similar to the first tutorial. We're going to go in and we're going to create a new layer. Okay, I've already done that, but I just want to show you, if you don't see two layers here, if you just see your background layer, okay, let me get rid of this and I'll just show you. That's what you're going to see when you first open up your image. If I go into Layer, Duplicate Layer, I now have this piece on top of my original image that I'm going to be working on as opposed to my original image. All right. Your history palette is recording every step that you take. So if you do something and you aren't happy with it, you can simply go back a step, okay, in your history palette. You can also go forward if you decide to delete something and then you decide you want it back. You can actually go back to it. So your history palette is going to record a number of steps for you, and it's a nice undo redo option if you would need. Okay, so let's color correct this. Let's do the first thing that we did in the other tutorial, adjustment. We're going to go to curves, and I'm going to have my eyedroppers here on the right hand side. The first one I'm going to do now, I'm going to do the shadow. Okay, I'm going to do the shadow dropper, and I think the darkest part of the image is going to be somewhere here in her hair. So I'm going to correct for that. And you see immediately that the shadow has gotten darker. Okay, we've created a little bit more, the image is not as flat as it was before. Okay, the shadows have darkened. Now we're going to go into our highlight eyedropper, and I'm going to select somewhere down here in the book. Okay, Once I select that, now my highlights have appeared. And now I really, really have a nice shot. It's much better than what I had with the green overtones before. I'm going to click OK to accept that. Okay, if I decided I didn't want it, I could always go back in my history palette, get rid of it, or I could simply take this layer, it's highlighted in blue, and click on this little trash can right here, and that's going to get rid of that layer. Once that piece is fine, the other section that I want to show you, which will be fairly important in your portraits and something you can play around with, is just some general skin smoothing techniques. Okay, once I've color corrected, I'm going to go now into my view, and I'm going to zoom in. I want to zoom in on these ladies. All right, if I don't get exactly where I need, I can use my move tool. Over here in your tools palette, you have a move tool. If I click on the image, I can drag that around. And I want to zoom in for the next thing that I'm going to show you, because what I'd like to show you is a tool over here called the clone stamp. Okay, and this is a pretty basic tool for Photoshop and for Pixlr, but it's a good way to get started on some of these pieces of just skin smoothing. So I'm going to select my clone stamp. What I'm going to do is just go under her eyes. Okay, I'm not doing anything right now. I'm just simply moving my cursor, but I want to show you the shadowing under her eyes. I can actually go in and correct for that. Okay, if I hit my command button on my computer, what it's going to do is going to set a little target. And what I'm saying is, if with that target, I want to select that part of her skin. Okay, so I hit command and I select my mouse. It's now selected this part of her skin, and I'm just going to gently go up under her eye and get rid of the bit of shadow that's under her eye. Okay, and then I'm going to go over here, and again, I'm going to hit my command button to actually select. I want it to clone this part of her cheek. And now I'm going to take the clone stamp and hit the mouse and just drag underneath. Okay, and that's just going to lighten up under her eyes a little bit. If it's too severe, you can go back into the clone stamp and you can delete a couple of steps. You want to do this zoomed in. You want to do this with a fairly small brush. I can control my brush size right up here under my tool options. Right now my brush is about a 25, and that's a pretty good size. If I wanted it a little bigger, I'd select 30 or 50. Okay, and then when I come back to my area, you can see the brush is much larger. All right, but I'm going to go back. That 25 was a pretty good size for as much as I'm zoomed in right now. You can also see the other important piece is the opacity. If I were to have 100% opacity, my clone stamp would be much too heavy. Okay, it would actually be cloning her entire cheek. What I want it to do is just take a little bit of that light tone. So I've cut it down to about half. Very, very important when you're actually using the clone stamp. So I'm going to show you. I'm just going to go in and do the eyes of this second subject. I'm going to take my cursor and just kind of hover over here, hit my command key, and I'm just going to drag along and kind of just highlight. I'm going to sample again. You can never sample too much. Okay, you always want to be sampling because that is going to give you a much more detailed result. Okay, I'm just going to go right over here and I'm just sampling just under her chin because I'm cloning the skin on her cheek and placing it under her eye. Okay, you want to just be very, very gentle. But this is a great way to get rid of blemishes. Okay, it's a great way to just get rid of a little bit of skin discoloration. If I zoom back out, oh, sorry, I'm hitting zoom in. We're going to zoom right back out. And I'm going to show you the difference. Okay, here's my image. If I click on this little checkbox, it's going to show me what my image looked like before. It was very green and they had some pretty heavy shadows under their eyes. And now it's color corrected and not such heavy shadows under their eyes. All right, so that's a second tool that you can use this week in your portraits. Just try a little bit of light clone stamping. You don't have to do the whole face. You don't want it to look fake or overdone or photoshopped. Remember to keep that opacity way down, even if 52 is too high. Experiment with that opacity and that brush size. Be zooming in and working in detail instead of being way zoomed out and working like this. Okay, we want to be really zoomed in to our particular subject. okay, and just gently going under the eyes with the clone stamp. Remember, you have to sample. You've got to sample what you want to clone before you actually apply it. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed that, and if you have any questions, feel free to email me, and good luck this week with your assignments.